Okay. Um, a very good morning to everyone watching this. I hope you've had a very good festive season break. So today I have with me Gitanjali Master, Advocacy and Communication Specialist from Unicef India for a very special address at this LinkedIn Live. So as you may be aware, CRB or the Center for Responsible Business is hosting its 8th annual sustainability conference or the ISS 2021 from October 27th to 29th, 2021. And this year, the conference revolves around the theme of accelerating and reinforcing transformative change for societal resilience. Well, like the last year, this year too, CRB is sort of collaborating with UNICEF India in organizing this session on family friendly policies, a pathway for responsible value chain and acceleration towards SDGs. And this session is scheduled for October 28th from 11:45 to 1:15 p.m. IST. I hope you've marked your calendars for that. Just very, very quickly, the objective of this session is really to understand from different industry stakeholders the experiences, the financial benefits, the competitive advantage of implementing family friendly policies, as well as really to also map the roles of different stakeholders who can support the businesses in the RNG sector to integrate these policies in their daily operations. Along with that, we would also look at the correlation between family friendly policies and sustainable development goals and how implementation of these policies or the operationalization of these policies will help businesses in realizing their commitment to the SDGs. Also, very, very quickly, just to set the context, this session is an extension of a broader project that UNICEF and CRB has been collaborating on since the past few years. So the project has been divided into two phases. We recently completed phase one, which was the scoping study conducted at a pan-India level across 6 ready-made garment clusters, with the objective of sort of understanding the status of the existing family-friendly policies on the ground and to also gauge the impact that these policies have on the lives of the ready-made garment workers, right? So and as the after the successful completion of phase one, we are now looking at phase two of the project, which is basically the interim phase. And the objective really is to bring together all of the stakeholders or shareholders of the RMG ecosystem and focus on the uptake of the FFP framework at a pan India level. And this is exactly why I have Gitanjali Master with me today. She's going to run us through the FFP framework, what it is, what are some of the benefits, what have been some of UNICEF's experiences in implementing this framework within the Southeast Asian region, right? And very briefly, Gitanjali Master is a public-private partnership specialist at UNICEF India. She has been with the organization for over 16 years and leads the engagement with businesses and aggregators to help in building the discourse around child rights and business principles. She also works closely with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to support the uptake of the national guidelines for responsible business conduct among businesses. Gitanjali is actively involved in supporting workplace policies and sustainability in businesses to promote business for results. Gitanjali, thank you so much for joining us today. And at the very onset, let me just begin with this very basic question. Can you tell us for the wider audience, for our understanding, what FFPs are and what is it that UNICEF envisages out of the FFP framework? Over to you, Gitanjali.
Thank you so much, Padmaja, and really wonderful to be with everyone today. And as most of us are aware, all over the world, parents, primary caregivers often struggle with the fundamental task of bringing up children while also earning money for their family and giving children the care that they need, right? And the burden of responsibility many a times also falls on women. Family-friendly policies are those that can actually tackle some of these issues of creating that balance by helping parents and other caregivers to find the right balance between caring and earning. And I think both the dimensions uh, are equally important to every individual. And these policies include workplace childcare, they include social protection, they can improve the well-being of the workers, they can help in promoting gender equality, meeting fundamental human rights, and also boosting productivity.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you for outlining that for us. Also, Gitanjali, so UNICEF, we've seen that UNICEF has published a lot of materials, a lot of knowledge products on family friendly policies, right? So we have the policy brief, we have the benefits for employers guide, as well as the FFP handbook, right, amongst others. So, for us to understand the sources of these very, very insightful materials, has UNICEF previously implemented the FFP framework in the Southeast Asian region? And if yes, could you please walk us through some of the learnings or your experiences from such implementation?
Certainly, Padmaja, I think for UNICEF, an important facet has been to, as you rightly highlighted, the kind of knowledge or the technical expertise that UNICEF brings around the family-friendly policies, of course, in partnership with other UN agencies, including the ILO, including UN Women. We work very closely with all our, UN agencies, other UN agencies, to put these frameworks together. From a family-friendly policies perspective, UNICEF has actually implemented some programs in Bangladesh and Vietnam, among other countries in South and East Asia. In many countries, what we noticed was that businesses have begun to see the value of offering family-friendly policies that increase employee retention, they reduce absenteeism, they lower recruitment costs time and again. They also enable working parents, especially mothers, to advance their careers, right? Because they know they're getting the support, which in turn then is obviously responsible for improving or boosting their morale, their engagement at work. And this is the way that companies are able to sort of become more competitive, attract the best talent, and also improve brand image, thereby taking companies to global sustainability standards, right? Now, giving a very specific example of a ready-made garments factory in Bangladesh, and this is just an example that we have noted that there was almost a $25,000 investment in one medium-sized factory to improve maternity rights protection and breastfeeding support. These were the two pieces over years that the factory invested in. And the savings that the factory made were to the tune of $52,000 in the first 12 months, based on higher retention of female workers, skilled female workers, um, um, coming back to work after pregnancy break, decreased absenteeism among working mothers with infants, and also an increase in enhanced productivity. With a reduced rate of error, when you bring in that reduced rate of error in this industry among working mothers. So this is a very concrete example that we have from Bangladesh, where in the ready-made garments factory, very concrete benefits were seen when you actually understood how an investment in something like this can actually have much longer term returns and benefits.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I think that the example has been really important for us as well as for the audience to understand the impact that FFPs can have. Also, just to add on to that, and I think for us to also understand, we know that for the countries who are producing the ready-made, where there is a predominant production of ready-made garments, be it India, be it Vietnam, we see that the landscape is mostly dominated by the small and medium industries, right? So we have the small and medium manufacturers producing the clothes that we are all wearing today. So how different do you think the implementation for the small and medium enterprises would look like? Do you see any difference in implementation of FFPs for large businesses and the small businesses?
You know, um, Absolutely, Padmaja, because I think let's understand one thing. I think, and I'm also going to speak a little bit in terms of the um, uh, from a COVID perspective and what we've really been through. I think when you talk about larger businesses, their infrastructure, their resources are much more in place, right? And when we're talking about the small and medium companies, medium-sized companies, the obviously the socio-economic impact of COVID-19 has been felt much more and is being felt hardest by the world's sort of most marginalized, and then also understanding that many of these businesses have found it difficult to sustain. There has been, low income workers who have actually suffered this, etc. However, I think one of the pieces that comes through very, very clearly is how the ecosystem has got to come together and strive together to extend support measures even to the informal workers, to the smaller industries. And I think that's really where the different stakeholders in this ecosystem come and play a role, whether it's the bigger brands, it's the bigger suppliers. How can they actually come in and support the family friendly policies integration even among the medium and small size industries, where it's not absolutely um, easy for them to actually put some of these practices in place. However, very, very important for them to think about it. Now, if you take a small example of having a breastfeeding space, in a small or a medium-sized company or a factory, you have a lot of women who are working in these factories. And if they were to know that they have a space where they can actually um, breastfeed their child, where they can actually leave their child, um, it's not a massive investment. It's something that they actually have within their office premise. It's a space. And of course, that space has a cost, but also the cost benefit of having that space is huge. So I think we have to look at two approaches. One is the ecosystem needs to support some of these smaller organizations and companies. And the other part is that they need to also be aware, a lot of awareness has to happen that something like this may seem big to them right now, but if invested in, will bring them far more returns.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that. Also, now we see that since the past decade or so, there has been a lot of conversation around the aspect of social sustainability or the S factor of the whole ESG discourse, right? And in the form of, say, when we are talking about social sustainability measures, we are usually looking at the worker centric policies or the worker welfare policies, of which family friendly policies is an extension, right? And the latest development has been on the introduction of sustainability reporting by SEBI. And now we also have the draft National Action Plan by the Government of India. So do you see any correlation, the any correlation between family-friendly policies and responsible business, especially in today's pandemic times?
You know, family-friendly policies at the workplace are, I think, a very clear, subset of the larger national guidelines on responsible business conduct. When we talk about the national guidelines for responsible business conduct, within that, when we talk about employee well-being and we talk about workers' rights and human rights and business, I think family-friendly policies are an important subset under that larger umbrella. And they are obviously important because in their own way, ensuring that family-friendly policies are part of the sort of immediate and longer-term recovery plans is critical to support working parents, caregivers, children, you know, and giving them the kind of time, the resources, the information, and the services that they need to cope with it. So I think there is a very clear link between family-friendly policies and between the national guidelines on responsible business conduct. The if we look at the recommendations by UNICEF, ILO, UN Women, these provisions may include flexible working arrangements, paid parental leave, childcare at the workplace, continued breastfeeding support, and others, right? And as we see the impact of COVID-19 and how it's being felt by the most marginalized populations, one realizes that when we're talking about businesses adhering to the national guidelines and reporting, through the business responsibility and sustainability reports, um, that entire framework, the family-friendly policies at the workplace are a very, very key part of that. Because in the simplest way possible, in an easy way to comprehend, they can bring tremendous returns to the businesses. And as I mentioned right at the start, um, for every individual and every family, they are oftentimes the most vulnerable, are oftentimes struggling between earning and caring, and they need to do both. So I think there is an absolute correlation, and I would say more of a fitting into the larger umbrella of responsible business conduct, that the family friendly policies make a very clear connect to that piece.
Sure. Thanks for that, Gitanjali. And just as an extension to what you said, we also see that the Indian government has put up a lot of focus in its legislative framework, wherein we are talking about the provisions of family-friendly policies, such as maternity leave or the provision of creche and so on and so forth. So so say so how do you really see business? Do you see, I mean, my question to you would be, do you see businesses deriving benefits out of these already existing provisions?
Sure. So I think, when we talk about benefits, uh, let me say that it's got to be seen in that sense. And I think there has to be tremendous awareness that we need to keep building around what the benefits could be. Because, at the outset, when a small business looks at their own survival, will they really pay heed to something like this? And that's really where I would come in and advocate and speak and highlight time and again that family friendly policies are those that actually will help the workers balance their work and family lives. And we have enough evidence, Padmaja, to actually show us how um, these policies can actually help the health of not just the employees, the well-being of employees, but the uh, actually the well-being of the businesses. And I think that if we really think about now exactly what those benefits are, let me just outline some of those for you. Yeah, as I mentioned, we spoke about loss or less absenteeism. Now that's a very, that at prima facie that may seem that okay, it's not. So what is going to happen if there is um, less absenteeism? Yeah. So a 2017 study, yeah, which was done by the International Finance Corporation, IFC, on the benefits of employer supported childcare equally, if those employers who invested in childcare facilities, which is largely the facet of family friendly policies, found advantages for businesses in addition to just working parents and their children. Because a business can ask, so yes, it's going to make my employee and my staff or the working group get benefits from me, and of course their children will benefit. How does it benefit me? And here is what came out, right? Based on sort of the in-depth desk research and interviews with businesses across the world, the research found that businesses can benefit from supporting childcare in the following ways. The first one is enhanced recruitment, right? Improved quality of applicants and speed at which vacancies fill. Somebody will want to work in that place. The question can again be that if it's very small, I think it's a trickle down effect, right? Eventually, it'll even get to the smaller companies and the smaller factories. It has to start somewhere. So, first is enhanced recruitment. The second one is better retention. There is substantial reduction in employee turnover, which means that you're saving recruitment costs because those decline considerably. The third benefit is productivity gains, yeah. Reduced absences. When there is reduced absences, increase in focus, more motivation, more commitment, uh, then obviously the company is working much better at a higher productivity. That's a third advantage. The fourth one is from a women perspective. Globally, and in India, the focus is moving towards having a higher support for women at the workplace. There's more diversity, there's more advancement of women into management roles, etc. That is the fifth advantage. The sixth one I would like to mention is improved reputation. Whatever we may say, global brands, Indian brands, suppliers, and now I'm talking about the RMG sector, everybody is looking forward to be considered as an employer of choice, right? As a supplier of choice. And that is something that is a looking forward, because that is something that standards that people ask for. So an improved reputation is the next benefit. And finally, related to that is obviously the compliance with international standards, right? We do have that piece that there is that desire to have enhanced brand visibility, an alignment with international guidelines, with sustainability guidelines, and with sustainability goals. And that then makes it the final piece. Now, I'm not saying that all of these things are going to be a pure benefit for a smaller business. But like I said, the ecosystem has to think about it collectively. And then as you trickle down the different levels, if these benefits are made aware, if these benefits are highlighted, if these benefits are actually seen, it can impact the entire ecosystem.
Sure, thanks for that. And deriving from what you are saying, let me just, I think it is very important to underscore the very facts to our audience that the Indian ready-made garment industry is predominantly women served, right? 80% of its workforce is women. So they are engaged in the process of knitting, sewing, dyeing, embroidery, and so on and so forth. And this is exactly why, and given the workforce and labor force participation rate of women in a country like India, this is exactly why FFPs become so much important. And in this relation, Gitanjali, if you could tell us, we have seen that there are studies, like you had mentioned, about FFPs being implemented not only in the RMG industry, but across the IT and other sectors as well. But now coming down to the entire FFP project and the entire FFP session at ISS 2021, how do you, and why, in fact, why do you think the RMG industry today is in dire? Do you think, in fact, does the RMG industry need something like the FFPs? And if so, why do you think it is?
I think it's not only the RMG sector. I think family friendly policies under the realm of responsible business is really a good starting point for all businesses and all industries, Padmaja. And I think that we must be, we all can make a very collective effort to move there. Specifically from the ready-made garments industry, I feel a lot is happening. And I think in India, a lot is happening in this area. We have seen in the scoping study that CRB did. We also found that there are some very good practices which are available across the country. There are people who are really keen to move that forward, and I think that we have to understand that this is not something new or sudden, right? I think there are businesses in India, small, medium, and large, who understand the value of investing in employees, who understand and invest the importance of investing in workforce, right? However, some more can be done. And I think that's really where we believe the family friendly policies offer a very good sort of outline. They offer a good framework, which is something that can be adopted easily. Now, when we talk about the RMG sector specifically, I'll go a little bit again to the conversation around the ecosystem and highlight that, there is the government, which has very clear guidelines around responsible business conduct, right? We have specifically family friendly policies at the workplace is an important dimension around which we must generate awareness, whether we're talking about brands, whether we're talking about suppliers, whether we're talking about industry associations, government, as I mentioned, CSOs. There is everybody who has, a role to play. For example, when we talk about the industry associations in the RMG sector, we are aware that they can really play a role in amplifying the awareness, right? And create an enabling environment for these. The first step is awareness. The first step is building capacities for people to know, for people to understand that this is an important area of work. Brands can also encourage, through time and resource, to invest in integrating family-friendly policies at their workplaces and continuously monitor the quality. Yeah. And I think CSOs can be a very important partner in disseminating this information right down the value chain, wherever it is. So some of the things that I do believe that, practically, from an RMG perspective, which I would like to mention, are that, you know, we already, as you rightly mentioned, Padmaja, we already have a enabled policy environment, right? We know that there are certain policies and practices, um, and we have to see that these are aligned with the national legislation, international labor standards, whichever is higher. And the idea is to strive to go beyond these. So family-friendly policies are a simple and an easier way to actually align to these national legislations, these international standards. Um, then it's integrating family-friendly provisions into the core supply chain policies, standards, including the supplier's code of conduct, including the legal arrangements, etc. That is a second thing that one can consider and think about. The third, which I should have ideally mentioned first, which is very, very important, is the supplier awareness, the supplier capacity to improve the situation of working parents, right? Which in turn will impact the health and well being of their children, which will enable them to stay longer and better at work. And finally, it's also adopting responsible and fair procurement and supply chain sourcing, right? That enable support businesses to implement the family friendly policy. So there are these 4 or 5 pieces that I mentioned are almost like practical ways in which companies, small, big, medium, can actually start to look at some of these dimensions in the RMG sector.
Sure, thanks. I think these are some of the very, very critical guiding principles I would like to say that you had mentioned, that are ought to be followed by businesses in implementing FFPs. So finally, Gitanjali, I would just like to understand from you. So what would be, say, a small or a medium or a large enterprise is in its very initial steps of implementing or integrating FFPs? What would be sort of your recommendations for them to start or to begin with?
So, I think what we have is a very clear 5-step process. Um, that process includes understanding the situation as it is, mapping out what is there at the moment, what is not there. Everybody in the ecosystem will be at different stages. Once you have those, you have that mapped out, you have that in-depth sort of an understanding, then you move on to stage 2 to actually put some principles in place. You actually then post the mapping, identify what are some of those facets from the family friendly policies that can actually be put in place. And then you obviously have a monitoring evaluation mechanism to see that once those pieces are put in place, and this happens when I said, mapping, the next part is also to have conversations with the senior management of every business and with the workers, right? So you have to get a very good sense of what is it that is currently there, what are some of the challenges, what are the gaps, how can they actually start putting some of these things in place. You put the action plan and then you have a monitoring mechanism, right? Those are the pieces that you typically put in place as a 3 to 5 pronged approach. And then there is some amount of hand holding required, right? And UNICEF, we work with partners. We're very happy that we're working with CRB. And we also have a plan to, implement and integrate family-friendly policies with the CRB team, with a certain cluster and certain, factories where we can show the impact over a period of time. Yeah. And I think these processes or the steps that I mentioned obviously have to be more in depth. They have to have more, if I can say, a little bit more deeper work in terms of mapping, understanding issues, identifying what are the challenges, what is there currently, what is not there, what is that we want to put in place. And once all of these 4 to 5 steps are done, then you have actually said that, yes, this factory or this organization is starting to implement family friendly policies. But the more important part is also the journey. It's really not a tick in the box. It's not to say that, yes, I have a breastfeeding space created. Is the breastfeeding space viable? Is it safe? Does a woman feel comfortable feeding her child there? There are many dimensions to it. So family-friendly policies integration is a journey between first understanding that this is good for the business. The second, for then saying that you embrace them and you will move with them. But the third and the most important part is actual integration, and then also the sense for monitoring and evaluating it.
Sorry. Yeah, I was on mute. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. I think very, very well put. And I completely agree when you say that it is not just a checkbox that you tick for audits. It is not an audit checklist. It is, in fact, a journey. And having a breastfeeding space is not sufficient. Having a creche is not sufficient. But how are the workers really benefiting out of it? Are the workers really satisfied? Is it really serving the purpose? Is what we really need to look at. With this, Gitanjali, thank you again, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. And we are really, if it is already not evident, we are really, really excited to take forward the conversation around FFPs in the Indian context. And for everybody watching this, I hope you've marked your calendars. I would like to reiterate again the session on family friendly policies with UNICEF India is being conducted on October 28th from 11:40 to 1:15 p.m. We hope to see you there. Thank you, Gitanjali. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you, Padmaja. Thank you, the CRB team. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.